1906 San Francisco earthquake. Imagine waking up to a peaceful morning. The cool breeze of the Pacific fills the air, and the city is just beginning to stir. But at exactly 5:12 a.m., everything changes. April 18th, 1906, one of the deadliest earthquakes in U.S. history strikes San Francisco. A 7.9 magnitude quake devastates the city in just 45 seconds. But the real disaster is yet to come. Water pipes burst, gas lines rupture, and in moments the city is engulfed in flames. The fires burn uncontrollably for 3 days. San Francisco is in ruins. Over 3,000 people lose their lives, and more than 250,000 are left homeless. Entire neighborhoods are wiped off the map. But from this disaster, a new San Francisco emerges, stronger, safer, and more prepared. Today's modern city is built on the lessons of, but here's the question. If the San Andreas Fault moves again, will history repeat itself? 1976, Tangshan Earthquake, China. It was a city of industry, a symbol of China's rapid growth. But in the early hours of July 28, 1976, everything changed in just seconds. At exactly 3:42 a.m., an earthquake measuring 7.6 on the Richter scale struck Tangshan. The force was unimaginable, one of the deadliest quakes in human history. Entire neighborhoods crumbled. 85% of all buildings were destroyed in an instant. And then came the aftershocks, leaving no time for escape. Official reports say 242,000 people died, but some sources estimate the real death toll was over 650,000. The devastation was so complete, the city was unrecognizable. Rescue teams rushed to help, but aid arrived too late. The Chinese government initially refused international assistance, believing they could handle the crisis alone. For many, it was already too late. People trapped under the rubble succumbed to injuries, dehydration, and starvation. But Tangshan refused to be erased. Over the next decades, the city was rebuilt stronger than before. 1871, Great Chicago Fire, USA. The night was calm, but in a small barn in Chicago, a single flame would change history forever. October 8th, 1871. The Great Chicago Fire ignites in the O'Leary family barn. Legend has it, a cow kicked over a lantern. But was that really how it began? Chicago's buildings, sidewalks, and even roads were made of wood. Add in strong winds and a city recovering from another fire the day before, and disaster was inevitable. For 3 days, the fire raged uncontrollably. By the time it burned out, 300 people were dead, 100,000 were homeless, and over 17,000 buildings were reduced to ash. Chicago was devastated, but in the ashes of destruction, a new city was born. The fire led to major changes in building regulations, creating the modern, fireproof Chicago we know today. 1910, Big Burn, Idaho, USA, we know today. The American West was built on forests, endless trees fueling industry, railroads, and expansion. But in 1910, those same forests turned into a raging inferno that no one could stop. August 20th, 1910. For months, a brutal drought had dried out the forests of Idaho, Montana, and Washington. Then, a powerful windstorm hit. It combined hundreds of small fires into one unstoppable monster. In just 2 days, the wildfire burned 3 million acres, the size of Connecticut. Entire towns were wiped off the map. 85 people died, most of them firefighters. The fire was so intense that smoke reached New York City, thousands of miles away. But out of this disaster came something new, a national firefighting force. This fire led to the birth of the U.S. Forest Service as we know it today. 1953, North Sea flood, Netherlands and UK. Some disasters strike without warning, a peaceful night, and then The ocean rises, swallowing everything in its path. January 31st, 1953. A brutal storm surge combined with a high tide created a deadly 5-meter wave that smashed into the Netherlands, the UK, and Belgium. People were asleep when the flood struck. No warning systems, no time to escape.
Which swept down the coast to increase an already high spring tide. In some places, the total height of the water was more than 6 feet above the walls. Great gaps were scarred through the sea defences. People were awakened to find their houses surrounded in some cases by water many feet deep. It soon became apparent that this was no ordinary flood and that full-scale emergency measures were required. By daybreak, police, fire brigade and civil defense workers were fully mobilized. Boats were obtained from every possible source and used to rescue those who were trapped in their houses. To make absolutely certain that there were no people left in danger, a house-to-house search was organized in every district. The few stragglers who had previously refused to leave their houses were then brought to safety. Unfortunately, many people had no time to escape the rising waters. Some were drowned, some died of exposure in the bitterly cold wind, and even appeared to enjoy it at times. Perhaps that was because the school was flooded. Some of the would-be rescuers found themselves in need of rescue when they underestimated the depth of the water.
"2,500 people drowned in just a few hours. Tens of thousands of homes were destroyed. Livestock, crops, and entire villages disappeared underwater. The flood paralyzed the region. In some areas, water remained for months. But from this tragedy came a revolution in flood prevention. The Netherlands built the Delta Works, one of the most advanced flood control systems in the world. A's 1889 Johnstown Flood, USA. Some disasters are not caused by nature, but by human failure. For years, people warned that the South Fork Dam was unstable, but nothing was done May 31st, 1889. After days of relentless rain, the dam collapsed, unleashing a 30-foot-high wall of water on Johnstown. In just minutes, 2,209 people were dead. The flood was so powerful that it carried locomotives miles away. It was the deadliest flood in U.S. history. The dam was owned by wealthy industrialists. They lowered it to build a private fishing club. Their negligence led to a catastrophe. Today, Johnstown stands as a reminder of what happens when warnings go ignored. 1916, White Friday, Avalanche, Italy. War is already a brutal battle between nations. But in 1916, during World War I, an invisible enemy struck the soldiers stationed in the Alps. Mother Nature. December 13th, 1916. For weeks, heavy snowfall had buried the Italian and Austro-Hungarian forces stationed in the mountains. Then, on December 13th, the unthinkable happened. A massive avalanche roared down Mount Marmolada, crashing into the Austrian barracks below. Over 200,000 tons of snow buried 300 soldiers alive in seconds. There was no warning, no time to escape, but this was just the beginning. A chain reaction of avalanches followed, crushing both enemy and friendly troops. Some reports suggest that both sides deliberately caused avalanches by firing artillery into the snow-covered peaks. In total, over 10,000 soldiers perished, not from bullets, but from nature itself. The White Friday disaster remains one of the deadliest avalanches in history, a tragic reminder that sometimes war is fought against forces far beyond human control. 1970, Huascarán Avalanche, Peru. Some disasters come with no warning. Others come with warnings that are ignored. The 1970 Huascarán Avalanche was one of the deadliest in history, and it could have been prevented. May 31st, 1970. A massive 7.9 earthquake struck off the coast of Peru, shaking the entire region and triggering something catastrophic. The earthquake destabilized a 1-kilometer-wide block of ice high on Huascarán's northern face. Within seconds, millions of tons of ice and rock began rushing downhill. The avalanche accelerated to over 300 kilometers per hour, as fast as a jet plane. Within 3 minutes, it slammed into the towns of Ranrahirka and Yungay. 20,000 people were killed almost instantly. An entire town wiped off the map. Only a few survivors made it to higher ground in time. It was one of the worst avalanche disasters in recorded history,